Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yes, you're listening to the Forever West Old Time Radio Hour. I am calling in via my rotary phone. My microphone has quit working, so we are going to do the best we can. Doss Boot is joining us for part 2 of the Mad Trapper. We're going to wrap this thing up today, too. How you doing, Doss?
Good, man. Good. Been a tiring last few days, and the weather's turning here, and it does actually get hot in the Pacific Northwest. Considering what some don't believe that happens, but it does. And today was a warm day for here. It just kind of surprised me, and I'm a little wiped out from the heat, but that's all right because we're going to go back to the Arctic, so it'll be nice and cold, and it'll wake us back up.
That's right. Back to the frozen rivers.
Back to the frozen. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and plow through this. You and I both got some things going on this evening. So we're going to get through this best we can, not go off on too many different side roads, even though they always are very interesting to follow. Okay. So last week, I remember very specifically, we ended with the death of Constable Edgar Newt Millet. They had Johnson cornered in those grove of trees. It was dark. Millen was out in the open, and he got shot in the heart. And then, of course, the other constables that were with him, they start firing into the trees. They're assuming that they killed Johnson. But what actually happened is that he climbed what is known as the ice wall of the Richardson Mountains, which separates the Northwest Territories from the Yukon. And that pass, that ice wall, was approximately 6,000 feet in height. They have said in every account I've come across in the documentary to this day, no one knows how he did it. No one. It almost seems impossible. And they had mentioned in the documentary and several other sources too that it's been attempted several times over the years. It is a gigantic wall of ice. Okay.
That's insane.
So it is nuts. And you got to remember these conditions that are constantly going on. Storms. I saw a term that they used in one of the sources, a fog storm, a big fog storm that we'll talk about that, ends up costing them a couple of days, so this weather is nuts, down to like -45, So after Millen's death and after he disappears up to the Richardson Mountains and into the Yukon, like a week later, they can't find anything. There's no trail, which again, this entire time we could go into a big path about that, but it's nuts. There's no fire remnants. He doesn't have time. And how are you going to make a fire in that condition anyway? You would think you got to make a fire. You got to have heat, but the wind is insane. And they are up. Just a couple hundred kilometers from the Arctic Circle. They are literally at the edge of the Arctic Ocean. So, and that's where Aklavik is on the map. You look at it, it's situated right on the edge of the Arctic Ocean. So considering these conditions, no trails, no fire remnants, small game is very scarce. What's this guy surviving on? I always thought about that too. How is he walking to? They were talking about this guy is walking a full marathon a day in these insane conditions. And that's why, a couple of times I had mentioned before last week that they referred to him as, like a superhuman survivalist. And they just baffled all the Aboriginal trackers that grew up in that territory and know that land, who lived in it and breathe it and absorb it, everything. They still some of them were even like, man, they were in awe of him. There was almost like an appreciation of what he was doing. Okay, so not being able to find a trail, right? No trail.
I was gonna ask if you think just the unlikelihood of everything he did caused sort of an admiration in spite of the viciousness and the brutality of his response.
Yeah, it does seem that way with some of the accounts. It does seem that there was this kind of like slight appreciation that they were being outsmarted, out-tracked, out-trailed. I mean, everything you can think of. They just were kind of baffled on how he was doing this. Um, but yeah, so you have all these things intact. So the RCMP decides, because when all this time, it's going like a week later, they have no trail. That is when the RCMP requests that Canadian Airways pilot Wilfred Reed Wap May join the search from the sky, and in his Belanca, and along with his mechanic Jack Bowen, who were both well-known trackers, both in the military, both served in World War One. They had the ability from the sky to sort out the tracks, because the one other thing that the other trackers and the RCMPs were having to deal with is just how many other trappers are on the eastern slopes of the mountains. There's quite a few. There's fishermen, they're encountering all kinds of things. So they're definitely at some disadvantages. Okay. So Wat May goes up and they get him in there in the plane, and Jack Moen. One thing that they had discovered, and Wat May discovers this very quickly, is that Johnson was also using caribou herd trails, right? He was putting his footprints into caribou herds, the prints, and then walking the length of that trail. All right. And then at some point, I don't know if he's veering off or what, but I also wonder if there is a difference in snowfall that would produce fresh snow to leave fresh prints on one side of the mountain compared to the other, because we are going to see that some things are going to change eventually. Okay. But not yet. So they have all this difficulty finding him. Um, Wat May is up in the air. They don't have much luck. I mean, the first actual bit of any information comes February 12th. Okay. And he killed Edgar Newt Millen back on December 31st, right? Something like that. So all this time, over 40 days, February 12th, an Indian runner from the LaPierre House, which I discovered it was just a small trading post in that area, he came into the RCMP camp and informed them that he had picked up Johnson's snowshoe tracks. And he told them he knew it was his tracks because of the radio broadcast that had gone out and described the prints, right? And described Johnson, what they knew he was wearing, weapons, anything like that. That they went on a radio broadcast, and he says he swears he saw
Sauce?
them. Yeah.
Did he make the snowshoes himself?
That I did not find out, but I want to say I feel like he did,
I kind of
because
felt like
later
he
at
did too.
because later at the end, we will discover that the RCMP does their own investigation on him, and we're able to trace by sale, because of the money that he had on him. This is really jumping forward, but they were able to track some of the items that he purchased at Fort McPherson.
Yeah.
And the snowshoes were not one of them, I don't believe. So I do believe it's possible that he made them himself.
I've got a
Possible.
picture up showing the snowshoes along with
Yeah, that's
some
right.
other things.
So yeah, and I sent you another one. It was from a different source. It was like a little clear or whatever. But these are the actual items. It's like a sketch type thing they did, right? Of the actual items that he had on him. They keep them in the RCMP museum. There's like an exhibit kind of thing, and all his stuff is there. So yeah. Okay. LaPierre House, they find the tracks about 2 miles. Inspector Eames, he sends Wat May back up in the air, and May quickly finds his tracks leading towards the Bell River. But May lost the trail because he saw that Johnson's prints quickly vanished into a caribou herd trail. And that once again allowed him to blend in, disappear. And again, bad weather conditions. But Wat May, experienced as he was, picked up the actual caribou trail herd leading to the mouth of the Eagle River. But unfortunately, this is where this fog storm that I was reading about comes in right around February 14th and keeps him grounded for like 2 more days. The temperature dropped like another 10 or 15 degrees. The fog, I mean, the way they were describing it, it was almost like you would think that the fog had icicles hanging off it as it, moved through the mountains. It sounded just horrendous, like horrific. These conditions that all of them are in hunting this man. That's one of the things that all the historians I feel that have tackled this is all the questions of how does he do these things? It's
Yeah, and he was
just
in it for
insane.
so many days.
Right. 49 days. 49 days after he kills Millen. Yeah. Okay. So he disappears into the caribou tracks, but Watmay finds it. The fog grounds him for 2 more days. But February 17th, 1932, over a month since the hunt began, Constables Hersey and Verville, riding dog sleds, approached a bend in the Eagle River around, it said, about 11:45 a.m. They not only spotted Johnson's trail, I wanted to find what changed. He was ahead of them by a couple of days, and I couldn't find what mistake, if any, he made to where they caught up with him. And I don't know if it was the weather. I don't know if it was that caribou herd thing, like the fact that May was able to actually find the herd trail and it, gave him a direction. I'm not sure, but they catch up to him. They see his trail, and not only do they see his trail, they see Johnson up ahead about 300 yards approximately. They fire at him. Okay. They don't hit him right away, of course. They fire. Johnson reacts, takes his snowshoes off, throws them on, ties them up, hits the ice of the Eagle River. Okay. He is trying to run towards the shelter. He's kind of like wobbling, that run wobble with those snowshoes, and he's trying to make it to the riverbank. Verville and Hersey are still firing with long-range rifles while the dog sleds are moving closer. Johnson does reach the riverbank and begins returning fire, instantly hitting Constable Hersey in the chest. He does not die, though. Okay, Hersey is badly wounded, and I believe he even went in a coma or something afterwards. But again, they were able to save him. However, I think another thing gets pointed out a couple times in the sources and documentary is whoever Johnson is, he's also quite a marksman. Quite a marksman. And there begins talk of, did he serve in World War I? Quite possible.
Right.
Look at his survival instincts, the training. You know what I mean? It's, again, all these possibilities that they've been working on for years, and very interesting. Okay, so now it's getting close. So he hits Hersey in the chest. Constable Verville is now focused on the injured Hersey and also still trying to fire at Johnson and keep himself from getting hit. I was reading this, and at first I'm not sure why, but I got the answer here a few sentences later. But Albert Johnson's, for whatever reason, he decides to leave the cover of the riverbank, and he began running directly on the ice of the Eagle River. Okay. Now, mid-river, the RCMPs later stated that they believed he was attempting to make it to the opposite side of the bank because the incline would not be as steep on that side and would give him more access to the trees. That was their belief, right? Because he had to cross that Eagle River. He was going across it diagonally. Okay. All right. Mid-river. The rest of the 12-man search team emerged from the riverbank out of the tree line. They hollered for Johnson to stop. Of course, he does not. They just hailstorm of bullets at him. One of the bullets strikes his hip, femur area, upper thigh, and Johnson goes down directly on the ice. He cannot move now, cannot get up. So he takes his pack sack, throws it on the ice, and uses that to level his rifle and starts just firing back. And they are firing at him from that side of the riverbank. While he is on the ice, he gets hit again in the ribs on the side, and that goes all the way through. And During this whole time, while the gunfight is going on, I mean, I think he's hit at least 3 times: the leg, the ribs, and I believe there's another one in the arm. But there is a Witchin tracker and Special Constable John Moses. I don't know if Moses was told to do this, if he was informed by his commanding officers or whatever, but they told him to work his way behind Johnson on the other side. So he had to start doing that when that gunfire started, and Johnson was never aware of it. From what I can tell, Moses was the only one who was sent to do so. And in the middle of that gunfight, back and forth, Moses comes up on the other side and fires a shot from behind. So Johnson is laying on the ice firing, and Special Constable Moses shoots him in the back. It enters right above his left buttock and severs his spine.
There it is.
There it is. So Albert Johnson is dead on the ice. And if you would not mind bringing up this unbelievable photo. Now it's not something that you can really take in and see, but when you're kind of like really into this shit like we are, this photo from the aerial shot from Wat May's plane, because I know I sent you that one and I know you'll find it. So Wat May was right above. Now we're going to zoom in, and I know this is tough, and it's much better on your own phone, on your own laptop screen. That black speck, that is Albert Johnson dead on the Eagle River.
Which is really cool. I mean, as far away as it is, it's super cool to see. Like that's in the thick of it, and look at that, how wide that river is.
Yeah, well, that was the point. Like, I was like, when I was reading that after he shoot Hersey and he starts running across the riverbank, he kept firing, like, covering himself, and then he just sprinted. And I was like, why was he doing that? And when I read that the RCMPs were like, well, here's what we believe, I'm like, well, that makes sense. Also, when the caption of this photo, I know it's difficult, but somewhere down there in that tree line is the 12-man team. They're all spread out down there firing at him on that side. And then John Moses comes back on the other side of the tree line and fires from behind. And
I'm wondering if if you can still see it. For some reason, I can't see. There it is. You see my mouse. Like, there's some right shapes right here. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I figured you would find it because, dude, I was so focused on the trees, right? Because I get it. The trees are back off the bank line a little bit, but I was wondering, why did he think he was going to make it all the way across? I don't know. But then again, the posse, the team, they show up while he's running mid-river. So the timing of it couldn't have been better. And like I said, there was a lot of other details that explained how Hersey and Verville had gone ahead and found his tracks and where the rest of the team were at the time. But we would have had to go down a whole other path to explain that. So the timing of it is what I think just what he wasn't expecting. Again, I wish I knew what happened. What happened? He was 3 days ahead of them at one point. And at one point I found in one of the sources, they were literally saying that in 3 days, they figured the mileages, give or take, or kilometers, that in 3 days after Millen's death, and he went into the Richards Mountains, he probably went, I think they said something like 100 kilometers. I mean, I don't know if that's a lot, but it seems like a lot.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot. Yeah, I
It
think they
sounds
said
like
like 98 kilometers, I think it was, in like 3 days. That's what they figured, the trackers and the RCMPs. And these trackers too, again, everyone was just stunned. Okay, and so that ends Albert Johnson. It was a total of 49 days and a 245-kilometer hunt. That's how much was covered. Okay, so they don't approach his body right away. Probably pretty smart, especially after they, bombed, dynamited his cabin, and then he starts laughing maniacally. I forgot about that because I didn't find it in any of the sources. They don't say that that, oh, we heard him laughing maniacally, but it's in the documentary because I've watched that 3 times now, and I was making more notes like, okay, that's something that they say in the documentary, but I haven't found anywhere else. But that's what they said in the documentary. But it had to have come from some kind of source that after they threw the dynamite on the cabin roof and it collapsed, and then he starts firing at them, they're like, holy hell, like, okay, he's not dead. He was fortified in there, he survives. The documentary says when they start, you know, hypothermia could be possibly setting in. They're low on food. The dogs are low on food. They've got to retreat. That he was laughing maniacally at them as they left.
That is consistent with again, I don't know how reliable this source that I read was, but it's called the Carter Report, and it's
Yeah.
apparently by one of the guys who was part of the team. And he said that when one of the team was trying to shoot at him from a certain vantage point, that on the river, when he was on the river, that he waved at the guy before firing back. So the behavior is kind of erratic.
Right. Well, and another thing that we could be discussed too is this constant, the media hype to label him as a madman, right? The mad trapper. Something that's pointed out very significantly by everyone involved in this is that, he might have been a killer, might have been running from something, but they don't think he was insane. Not to succeed in how he succeeded. They didn't think there was anything maddening about it. You know what I mean? His ridiculous calm under pressure.
He was certainly trying to get away too. He wasn't like,
Absolutely.
I'm going down in a blaze of glory. He was trying to get out of there.
Right. And it's probably definitely, I mean, it's fun to speculate. We don't know, but it seems like a reflection of a past behavior that could be repeating itself. And, that's what he's worried about. But just the fact too that how this whole thing started, they just went to ask him a few questions and he shot him. I mean, didn't answer, didn't say a
Yeah.
word. He just fired.
And
So
all over some some traps that had been messed with or reported to be messed with, which I
yeah.
mean, it was never even established if that was him that sabotaged the traps.
No, not at all. They didn't even get a chance to establish it. I think that was the whole point. And another thing in the documentary they cover, there's a couple of the people that are involved in the exhumation that are Aboriginals from that area, and they had commented quite a bit on. I lost my train of thought. I was reading something here.
Dude, I hate when that happens.
I know because I'm imagining the next part of this, but yeah, there's a lot, and I watched the documentary again last night, so I've got a lot in my head. Okay, anyway, let's move on. They don't approach his body right away, because we talked about like his reaction. They don't. I don't know if they thought he was dead, if they were unsure, but with the temperatures, but they left him out there. They said at least 25 minutes before they approached his body, and he froze. Then he froze. Right. Okay. So Inspector Eames and the rest, they put Johnson's body on a dog sled. They take him back to that trading post, the La Pierre house. And this is according to all documentation. Like they could have done it other ways, I guess, but I think it's interesting. They hung him by his feet from a chain from the ceiling and fully documented him by taking photos. And now James will throw up this insane photo, and now we can see what the Mad Trapper looked like post-mortem.
Enhance.
Bueller.
I think I've got a couple here.
Yeah,
have
I
you ever
just gave
seen?
you a couple. You can throw whatever ones
You
on
ever
there.
seen Super Troopers?
Yeah.
Enhance.
Enhance.
Here we go. Here's one of them.
And there he is. Very emaciated at the time. The weight loss, they said, was rather extreme. But look at that, man.
Yeah.
Just
It's a really,
crazy.
I mean, the upturned nose is a really significant thing. If you ever compare photographs of suspected people who he could be, I mean, that nose seems pretty identifying.
Absolutely. Even from the side profile too. Yeah, man, that's it. When I first saw this, the first time I watched the documentary and they threw that picture up, you know. Well, another thing you realize too is that they've got him hanging,
Yeah. So
but
is he hanging upside down at this point, or did they flip him, or did they flip the camera?
I I have been asking myself the same thing. I wanted to include in my notes, but I didn't go that far to find out if the photo was taken while he was hanging upside down. But by all accounts, they hung him by his feet upside down while they account everything that was on him and everything. And there's some more. Those are the actual photos.
I think in the one on the left, he looks kind of like Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, he does a little bit. That tuft of
Right.
hair, that's gonna come in the exhumation, but that hair is also very interesting. Okay, so 2 days later, Johnson is loaded into Watmay's plane and flown to Aklavik. An inquest was held, and Albert Johnson was buried in the Aklavik cemetery. And they put a little white fence around where they buried him in Aklavik. And I sent you this cool photo earlier today. I came across it. Now check this out. It's kind of one of these things where it almost has like a Billy the Kid, the Powell's gravestone, right? Somebody around 1945, mid 1940s is what it said. So I just, mid is 1945. Around that time, those tree trunks were erected inside the fence line. Someone brought them there because there were never trees growing in between. There's several photos of this grave, and there's no trees growing, right? But I found this one when in an article that I'd come across, and it was an online article that was linked up through the RCMP archives. And somebody took those tree trunks, painted AJ on them, and set it inside, which I thought was pretty cool because it kind of has that outlaw sentimentality, right? You know what I mean? No one knows. He snuck in there at
Right.
night and, and he carved pals into the
Pals.
gravestone. Exactly. All that garbage, right? Even though we all know exactly how the pals was put in there, it is it is still a really cool thing to put into a movie when you have that camaraderie between all of them. You know what I mean? So I
It's just
totally
odd
get
that
why they
it's odd that someone felt strongly enough about Albert Johnson to do that because nobody knows who he was. He
right.
just shot some Canadian police. And
Mhm.
I mean, why would they do that? Why would they even build a fence around it? I find that really odd.
I'm not sure. And then also too, as the years went on and it became more of a thing, people were learning about it. I didn't send a photo of this, I don't believe, but there's a lot of them on the internet. Um, and it's viewable in the documentary as well. They had a big sign planted with on like two by fours, and it raised up and it said the grave of the mad trapper with a little bit of info, just like the thing next to the pal's gravestone in Fort Sumner. It's like a
Right.
little bio, right? Yeah. But I don't know if that sign is still up. I don't know if it's down because the photos that I've seen of it, even though there's a lot of them, the texture of the photos makes it look more like 80s, maybe
If we
80s, early 90s. I didn't
if
find
we want
anyone
to
that looks
talk
like
if we want to talk more about similarities, that cross is probably close to what Billy's looked like originally.
right, because it was off a fence post.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of similarity there. But, I did kind of feel that way. Same thing you were just doing. Why would somebody do that? But again, it's that love of outlawry and, I want to sneak into the grave and do this. But it kind of seems like this time somebody actually did. And, I don't know how long those two tree trunks stayed there, but I think it was pretty cool that I just found the photo in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that David King said maybe it was someone who knew him. Maybe, who knows? Never know. It's quite possibility. 1945, mid 1940s. He died in
Yeah.
1932. Because like all these years there was never a tree in there. Obviously, just one morning it was there. That's how I read it. It was just like there was nothing that anyone knew about it. It was just there. If I looked deep enough, you never know. They could have discovered who did it years later, but I didn't go that far. Um, So yeah, very interesting on how they treated the grave afterwards, for sure. Okay, now let's go over some autopsy revelations here. Okay, the man supposedly known as Albert Johnson was 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed approximately 145 pounds. However, his body was very emaciated, and they believed he most likely walked around at 170 to 175. Brown hair, pale blue eyes, also mentions his receding hairline. No evidence of fractures. Keep that in mind. What they say. Granted, they're just doing a quick autopsy type thing. I don't know how in detailed it was for the location and the time. However, that was something that was written in the autopsy report. No evidence of fractures on his persons. This is where this man becomes even more intriguing. He's carrying $2,414 in Canadian currency, 20s,
Yeah.
50s, and 100s. He has 3 American bills, 2 5s and a 10, 2 small bottles. One contained 5 small pearls of very little value. The other contained 5 pieces of dental bridge work, of gold dental bridge work. Okay. He also had a container that contained a total of 32 pills. They were wrapped in the cloth. The pills themselves were wrapped in a cloth and then put in the container. And they would find out that those were kidney pills.
Yeah, that's like they were like patent medicines
Yeah.
of the day, like,
Yeah.
snake oil type stuff.
And it kind of makes you wonder, what kind of pain was he possibly already in
Right.
while going through this insane expedition of physicality? uh, Nuts, just nuts. So the kidney pills. Okay, his weapons. Here we go. This is exactly his weapons because they have them. He had a Model 99 Savage 30-30 rifle with 39 shells. Okay, a 22 Winchester sawed off at the butt with 84 shells. An Ivar Johnson 16 gauge shotgun with 5 shells, both barrels and the butt completely sawed off, almost making it appear like a handgun. Right? Shotgun was traced to his purchases at Fort McPherson back in July of 1931.
Oh
He
man.
also purchased at Fort McPherson his bedroll, his pack sack, a small compass, and a lard tin used for brewing tea, and a single bitted axe. But nothing at all that would point into the terms of discovering his identity.
It's wild that, I mean, look at that shotgun.
Mhm.
Like what had he always been planning to do with that thing, you know?
Yeah,
I
I,
mean, when he does that kind of work before he's even questioned by police or before he gets involved in a shootout, that's a
I
man who
agree.
has weird plans or weird ideas about what he's going to need.
Exactly. There seems to also be this underlining suspicion or possibility that was he a killer? They suspected, they had some few unsolved missing person cases in the area, so of course there's some speculation here and there. Um, but it does make you wonder. I agree. And I think that after that first encounter with Constable Newt Millen, after that first encounter with him, and he disappeared at the Rat River. And the documentary, they say, he goes deep up the river and spends that 6 months where they don't hear nothing about him. Nobody sees him again. He constructs that cabin. I mean, that's what he was doing, right? It was probably hunting, fishing, and building that cabin. That's my best, overall assumption in that 6 months. That's what he was doing. And then all of a sudden just appears and supposedly is tampering with native trap lines. But now we know the condition of him. Maybe he was stealing the food just because he was hungry. because the man had $2,414 on him.
Yeah.
That he already had that money. He had the money and then spent some at Fort McPherson to get those supplies. He doesn't come into that kind of money, obviously, when he's out, near the Arctic Circle.
Right.
So that's another question. Also, they mentioned quite a few times in the documentary and the other articles, sources, that bridge work, and you can see it. Anyone who wants to watch this, I also discovered that the Arctic Manhunt, the hunt for the Mad Trapper, is also available on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. It's only 46 minutes long, and it covers so much stuff. And they cover a lot of aspects of this stuff. Yes, the things that he's carrying and how, why. I mean, exactly. How does he accomplish all of this with these things? There's no. I mean, yeah, you have a bedroll, but there's nothing for like a tent. There's nothing for coverage. So what did he do? I mean, was to cover that ground? He had to be constantly moving, but they did want to assume that at some point he had to have stopped. To either to rest, to find cover, but they didn't find really any evidence along the way that he did any of those things.
Well, and I can't really make out what it says here. It says number 6, this right here. A 30-30 shell concealed behind the
Butt plate.
Butt plate of the Savage rifle. Isn't that odd? Like, do you think maybe that was like a memento more than anything else? Like, if you're going to hide ammo where you're going to need a shell real quick, you're not going to conceal it behind the butt plate.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And when you said you were trying to read that, I came across that in the autopsy thing when they were going through his weapons. Yeah, they found that in the butt plate, and they
So I mean, you've got this hidden cartridge in a butt plate that obvious. I would assume, and I know it's dangerous to assume, but I would think might have some personal significance, right? Like a memento. And then you also have is said they found the pearls of no, they weren't worth anything.
Right.
Were those somehow connected to his past?
Right.
Just very interesting.
Right. And not to mention the fact keeping his own dental work. Another thing too, they commented on that for the time and considering how old, because they were able to determine how many years before he died that bridge work was done. Okay. At least 15 years before. Right. I wonder about that because they said it was advanced dentistry for the time.
And it should be, you wouldn't think that would be hard to track down.
I thought the same thing, but we still got a few more things. But yeah, I'd agree, because during the autopsy thing, they got his fingerprints. I was going to mention that too when I got to it, but yeah, they send the fingerprints to Ottawa. They send them to Washington, D.C. Nothing at all. They ran those photos that they took of him dead. Dude, they posted those in articles for the next few months. I did come across some interesting of, hey, we think that it possibly could be this guy that we knew and blah, 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 ABC. But again, they all, they have his DNA. They've had it since 2007. You know what I mean? Okay. All right. Let's get to that. He's got the belongings. They don't figure out his identity. Let's go. 2007. Myth Merchant Films of Alberta, Canada secures the legal permission for a team of forensic experts to exhume the remains of Albert Johnson's body and with hopes of discovering his true identity. That is really why they're doing it. The team of experts included Dr. David Sweet, Dr. Owen Beatty, Dr. Lynn Bell, Dr. Sam Andrews, and John Evans from the Canadian Police Research Center. Okay. They dug for a total of 37 hours before they hit the single line board of his coffin. And the reason why it took for so long was they hit an entire layer of permafrost and had to smash through it. And that proved to be rather difficult because in the small area they had to deal with, they were just using like, pickaxes and stuff and trying to break it up. And they built a little makeshift forensics lab, right? Like a tent. And you can watch the documentary. Anybody who's interested, it'll reveal everything that I'm talking about. So 37 hours later, they get to the top of his coffin, they pull it back, and I sent you a photo. When I was able to find this online. They pulled back, and instantly they saw his skull. And in this photo, you can't see it necessarily, but in the documentary, you can see it very, very clearly. He's got a tuft of hair, just like the tuft from the side profile of his postmortem photo, and that tuft is right on top of his hair and the top of his skull. In the documentary, they take the skull photo and show that little tuft of hair and put it side by side with his post-mortem side profile photo, and the tuft is exactly the same. It's nuts. It's one little tuft, but it's in the exact same shape, the one that kind of goes upward. So there he is.
And right
Okay.
there, I think right there's the image tons of people would love to see at Fort Sumner.
Absolutely. We said last week when we got to this, everyone who have ever taken time and energy, research, anything that you did into Billy the Kid and Garrett and Lincoln County War, his death, and you go, man, I just wish they would do this so we could have all the answers that no one has been able to discover.
Well,
But
and
then again,
here's a couple things that I think even the documentary pointed out, that one of the reasons this was so successful for them was the fact that it was so cold.
yeah,
And I wonder
yeah,
what effect the climate of Fort Sumner would have on the state of Billy's remains.
dude, they're probably gone. I'd imagine
Right.
the complete opposite, right? Probably not good. Well, again, that constant temperature. Granted, it does snow in New Mexico, but we're not talking Arctic snow, you know. So, but no, that's
Well,
a
I
very
shouldn't
good
say
point.
Billy's remains. I'll say whoever's remains are in that. Just for you,
Oh,
Doss.
Billy Barlow, Billy Barlow. But no, I mean, we've all wanted that. Now, anyone who is um member of Life and Legend or any other group that, we do kid stuff in, you know, we're purists. I mean, we've done our homework and we've done it numerous times over and over. We know what we believe, but we understand that there's always going to be that question. And something like this, an hour long, documentary on an exhumation of an outlaw, is something that, yeah, I have always just wondered would happen, especially as I got deeper into kid history. But then, of course, there's the other side of me that doesn't want it to happen at all. You know, just kind
So
of just leave it
they
alone.
exhumed uh, Johnson in 2007,
That's what I was able to find, but I
and
wasn't able to find a date. And then the documentary first aired in 2009.
so he died in, again, it was 1931.
32.
32. So
Oh, yeah,
this is from 1932 to 2007, and I
hmm,
mean, look at the state. They were worried they
absolutely.
were going to get anything. Now
Yeah,
think about 1881 to 2026 or beyond.
it puts things into a massive perspective.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I mean, what they have here, I was reading an article on it. They have his DNA where they
Yep.
can compare with, like, uploading the results onto GEDmatch or Ancestry 23andMe, and it will match with cousins. And I think they've
Yeah.
been able to tell that he has common ancestors to, like, a Swedish descendant or a Swedish ancestor way back to like the 1700s, and that's as close as they can get. So people
Yeah.
don't realize when you do this kind of stuff with the cousin matching, not
Yeah.
with going through the mother's line or the father's line, but with just, hey, we have this sample of this guy, let's see if he pairs up.
Yeah.
There it's a needle in a very big haystack, and they're probably still digging. And the few people that have come forward and said, hey, I think it's my ancestor, it turned out they weren't connected. So they've gotten 0 hits on it, and they're
Yep.
still just fumbling in the dark. And they've exhumed a body and gotten DNA. So
Yeah.
just shows
And
you the
it's
challenges if they did successfully exhume anyone at Fort Sumner.
exactly. Yeah, no, it's all great points. Yeah, I figured we would cross into that, in that territory of Billy because why not? You know what I mean? That's the first thing I thought of. Was like, man, how awesome would it be, for them to do that and achieve that? I mean, just oh man, like my heart would just be sinking if I were able to see that, but and it may be in a good way. But I do understand them wanting to do this, but at the same time, I kind of wonder from 1932 up until the time of the exhumation or the discussion of an exhumation, was he just, I didn't go that far, but it's probably pretty easy to do so. I wonder if he carried a legend status that was just remarkable and almost to the point of being unbelievable. You know what I mean? And then what got the interest in the mid 2000s to want to exhume him? You know what I
Right. And
mean?
how do you justify that,
Right. That's another good point. Like he's
other
just
than
there
just
for 75.
curiosity?
Yeah, 75 years. No one seems to give a shit other than the guy whoever puts the tree trunk with the AJ in there, right? And no, that's what I'm wondering. Billy, we all know his legend status is nothing until the mid 1920s, and then once Burns's book gets released, and then begins the saga. Right? It's a good title, The Saga of Billy the Kid, because that's when it really begins. Now, I wonder with Johnson though, did he have that posthumously or not? I always wondered, but it will take a little bit more looking into. But we still got a few more things that are really interesting that I forgot. When they get the remains. Okay, so earlier the autopsy that they did in 1932 with no visible fractures. Okay, well, visible fractures. How do you see a fracture? That kind of cracked me up. So his remains revealed that he did have 2 completely healed fractures. Okay. One in his right hand near the index finger, and then he broke his left toe. And both of those fractures had healed nicely, considering, and they were able to determine, again, they were anywhere between 10 and 15 years prior to his death. So lots of time for him to heal. Now, this is crazy. And we actually have an answer. And they show it. On his left femur, they found a massive crater, okay, in the bone, like a big hole that was there. They were able to determine that back when he was sprinting across, trying to get across the ice, and they opened up fire in that huge hailstorm of bullets, and the one that hit him in the femur, like I had said, like hip, upper thigh area, and that's what they could tell from when he went down. They were able to determine that what had happened was he had a cartridge, he had a shell in, he had a cartridge pack in that pocket, and when they shot him, it exploded
Oh man.
and put that crater in his femur. So that is why he hit the ice and he was not moving again. That's
I
why.
wonder if that would have eventually have been fatal itself.
I would think so. They didn't go as far to mention that, but I kind of figured, like, dude, you're out there in that condition, and now you have a gigantic hole the size of a fist in your leg. It's pretty nuts. It's pretty crazy how they were
Yeah.
able to determine that. But yeah, what they had on, they're like, well, what does that? Not the ammunition that hit him. That would have made that size crater. So they were trying, and they were able to determine that from the ammunition that he had on him. So very interesting.
It's like getting hit with a
Okay.
hand grenade of his own making.
Absolutely. Okay. Here's another big one. Since birth, he suffered from scoliosis.
That'd be a good marker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very clear as day, too, man. Like they throw it up there on the side by side thing, and dude, it is as crooked as it gets. Very
Wow.
interesting. Very interesting. And I think, again, so because they took samples from his teeth, his bones, and I believe from the tuft of hair. Okay. They were able to determine that from the oxygen isotope tests, they were able to determine that, he was what Scandinavian or Sweden or whatever it was.
Something like Norwegian, maybe.
Yeah, right. Like a combination, I think, of a couple of those
Yeah.
European, but he spent his youth most likely in the American Midwest. And for most of his youth, his diet consisted predominantly of corn. Um, a Scandinavian heritage. Fingerprints were sent, Ottawa, Washington, D.C., no match. In the documentary, there's a few guys, but there's one guy particular, I believe his name was Oleg Crate, Oleg Crate or Crate or something like that. I couldn't say the last name. And he's got a strong, like Swedish, Scandinavian type accent. He is convinced, and they have in the documentary, he is convinced, especially during the time of the making of the documentary, that Albert Johnson was most likely his great uncle or great great uncle named Johnny Johnson. And
Yeah,
then
it
they show a
sounded pretty
photo.
good too.
Yeah, they show a photo of Johnny Johnson. There's a couple of photos they show him in the documentary, but of course, they did that DNA test and no go. And that guy was pretty, he had a lot
Yeah.
of good circumstantial evidence that
Yeah, he
pointed.
did. It
I
was
was
a very convincing argument.
absolutely not like some of the ones we've heard with other outlaws, but
Yeah.
this one was, very convincing. I agree. But yeah, they went ahead and tested him and no go. So he's not
There
Johnny Johnson.
there is
Um,
I read this book on Amazon. It was like $3 on Kindle, and it wasn't very well produced, but it was interesting read. And he talked a lot about the DNA, and he had a potential candidate, and I don't think they've ruled this candidate out yet, but it was a guy in the Midwest who disappeared, and he found an old genealogy book from this family, and it mentioned inside that, hey, this guy was so and so, and Aunt Susie thinks he was like the mad trapper from, you know, Canada, and they never really broadcast it. He just kind of found it in a personal family genealogy book, and
yeah,
it was a good case, but I think they're going to have to find someone to test the DNA, but that could be
yeah,
another one.
yeah. Very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. I have read further on. Again, it would mean a whole other episode. However, I have decided I think I will do one post in regard to this, and I will do it within 48 hours of this episode. That way, it doesn't get too far away. But the RCMP did their own investigation afterwards, and like I said, I was talking to you about this. From the money that they had, they were able to trace some of the money, some of the $50 bills, I believe, they were able to trace back to a bank, I believe in Montreal, and a couple of the other bills they were able to trace to the sale used at Fort McPherson. And the
Huh.
RCMP has their own possible belief. Now, I don't know about 2026, obviously, but at the time, around 1933, between 1933 and 1934, they had a speculation, had an idea, a theory that he was possibly a man named, uh, uh, I think it was Edgar Nelson or something like that. Um, yeah, I'm going to do a post on it because there's a photo of him and the money. There's a connection between that man, the Nelson man, and the Mad Trapper's money. But
Was it Arthur Nelson?
yes, Arthur Nelson. That was it. I didn't go very far. I just remembered reading it like, in the next year or so after he died, they were investigating the money that he had on him, and it took him down this interesting path that somehow connected to a man named Arthur Nelson who had a Scandinavian background, fit the same build and everything else. And at some point, just a few months before the Mad Trapper shows up, Arthur Nelson disappears,
Yeah.
vanishes. So very interesting. I thought I would do a quick post maybe on that talks about that. But yeah, they uncovered 4 fingernails still intact. So this was a DNA dream.
Yeah.
Everything you could possibly think of, and they still, as of now, have no idea who he actually is. So
Right.
again, good point. It tells us what we would have to endure, if anything at all, if they ever tried to, if that ever happened, but we know it won't. But yeah,
There's so much more to delve into,
oh
more
yeah,
subtleties and intricacies, and I
yeah,
definitely plan to buy a few books on it. What books are out there? There's not much, but it's definitely going to be something that I research more and enjoy digging into more.
I agree. It's very interesting. I think it's also fantastic for just like a good, like, historical debate conversation, and talk about things like his marksmanship, his skills of survival. Was he trained? Did he possibly serve in World War One? His age, the timeline fits, you know.
Yeah,
There's all
definitely.
kinds of things that I'm kind of wondering. I mean, the kidney pills,
Right.
you know what I mean? What kind of pain was he
And
dealing with this entire time?
he chooses to get gold dental work.
Right, which they considered to be sophisticated for the time.
Yeah. It's
So,
so odd.
yeah, and there becomes that question, right? Where did this money come from? Where did this money? They gave an assumption number that they assumed he had at least $3,000 when he arrived in Fort McPherson back in July of 1931 and
Yeah.
made those purchases at the store, at the Northern Trader store, right? He's encountered by Millen, and right then and there, I think that's where the weirdness comes in, right? He's packing all this money. He's in one of the furthest points on the northern tip, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, that whole conversation that people have about those who are either born and bred in Alaska and those who run away from something and go there. And so, of course, was he running from something? Did he have a past? We have to speculate that, like you said earlier, he definitely was not willing to be questioned, arrested. I mean, he shot at the instantaneous question, like, knock, knock, hey, Albert Johnson, and then just boom,
Yeah.
no hesitation whatsoever. Not,
Well, David King says if the book ain't out there, James, someone needs to write it, and I happily designate that task, delegate it to you, Doss.
well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things. There's actually some good articles. There are some books, but yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how many books there are after the exhumation. There might be one, but I think
Yeah.
most of them came out, years before that, and so it's missing a lot of that updated info that they got after they able, to get his DNA. But it is so intriguing. It's just one of those things: the scoliosis, the kidney pills, the weight loss, the emaciated face and body. Man, it's like when I first saw it, I was like, he's not human, right? Like that's when I first started. Like, did they take this mask off? His ski mask, his winter mask, and they're like, uh, is this a human being? Did we find a creature? They're doing experiments up here in the mountains. Like, I wondered. I think that was one of the things when I saw his face. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me! I have to know everything about this. I have to know as much as I can in a small period of time because
Right.
I'm always got other stuff going on, and the Swain stuff I was going to tell you, I'll tell you off the air, but I came across something big a couple days ago, and then I had to kind of support it completely, which I was able to do. So
Cool.
yeah, anyway, so I got all that stuff going on, but I did think about maybe like an article or something like this, but there's actually quite a bit of information out there. And what I've noticed and all the resources, if anybody wants to know more, head over to the RCMP Museum archive site. It's pretty user friendly. There are other links that will take you to other locations, for other sources that you can read. The documentary, again, is available on Tubi and YouTube. It is called Arctic Manhunt: The Hunt for the Mad Trapper. And everything we've talked about, they do a great reenactment of the entire like hunt. It starts with December 1931 when they approach the cabin and he shoots King. That's where the documentary starts. Nothing really much about those first initial meetings with Newt Millen, with Edgar Millen, but they do talk about it. It's more takes place right when they approach his cabin, and then all hell breaks loose, right? And then they do this great reenactment of showing, acting out like how he possibly got over that ice wall, the temperatures and the time of night that he was doing it. That's something that the more and more I looked into and looked at photos of the Richardson Mountains and that pass that separates them from the Yukon. Dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. I would want to be I'm more engaged in wanting to know how someone who is in his condition, especially, and in those weather conditions, pulled that off.
Right. Well,
Because they couldn't understand it. They still don't. I was baffled at the attempt. I think is also very, very brave and maybe stupid, but what choice did he have? Right?
yeah,
They had cornered him. But it's so interesting.
it
It's
is.
so interesting. It makes me. It's like any of those outlaws, like the Swain stuff. You've got some tossed up childhood information, but none of it checks out.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder what this guy is. But again, one of the biggest things we just kind of mulled over this whole time is we don't even know if his name is Albert Johnson to begin with. That's another thing. Where do you start? Is that his actual name? I would go no. Like I don't think it ever was his name.
It's the mystery that drives all this, man. Who was John Swain? Who was the Mad Trapper? Who's
Yeah.
who was Billy the Kid? Really, like who were his parents? It's the unknown. It seems that
Yeah.
fuels all of our
Yeah.
curiosities. And look at us, we were able to wrap up the Mad Trapper in 2 episodes.
Yeah. Again, we could have shared a lot more, but then again, that's what this is for. We'll introduce some stuff, and if you guys want to, take a look, uh, research it yourself, find these articles, RCMP website, the documentary, and then you guys can also have you your own speculations, your own questions, come into Forever West and throw them up in a post, because there's other details that we did leave out because we would have had to do 4 or 5 episodes to include it.
Yeah.
But watch the documentary. I think you'll all be amazed, because it depends, I guess, on how you feel about watching that kind of historical moment. And to me, it was pretty damn cool. It was pretty exciting, especially when they busted through that permafrost and then found the coffin, because after that many hours, they were literally about close to packing it all up. And so the fact that they were able to find him, it's, I think, just is a feat in itself. And look how hard they tried. It's like, we're not gonna go away. We're gonna break through that ground and we're gonna find him. And they did. And I think it's so cool when they pull back that coffin lid, man, and there's his skull. And again, when you watch the documentary, you see that tuft of hair, they line up the profiles. It's nuts because the hair is the exact same.
Yeah. What's our next
Everything we
topic,
ever wanted
Dawes?
to know.
What's our next episode?
I was going to ask you about that. I had an idea. I can either talk to you about it, off air, but I thought we do the West Virginia Matawan.
The Mine Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
However, I think you should present it in the episode, and I will be asking the questions of James. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like this is very close to you. You've been sharing a lot of information on that with me, and I can tell it's something that's been taking up some of your interest. And so I'm very, very curious. I did look up some more stuff on it after you sent me some stuff. And again, this is one of those very central focused thing in West Virginia that I feel like, unless you're from there, you may not know about it at all. I had never even heard of anything like this at all. And when you shared it to me and I followed a couple of links, again, I was like, this has got to be an episode. I think it's very interesting. And I can tell how much you've been getting into it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's going to take me more than a week to get ready.
Okay.
But I definitely want to do it. And I know some folks will be like, what? That's West Virginia Mine Wars. That's Appalachian. That ain't nowhere near the West. But number one, we really just do what we want on this show. And number two, what's more West than the state that has the word West in it?
Exactly.
And that's West Virginia.
Exactly. No complaining afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. A couple other things. I do want to talk about the Bonito massacre sometime.
Yes.
That we can address that. We can talk about a couple other things that I've got in my mind, and then you've got, of course, the big thing that you wanted to talk about. I don't know if you want to commit yet, but we can do that
Which one?
anytime. The John
Which one?
Middleton.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about doing that. I mean, that is something that we could do either next week or after the Mine Wars. But yeah, for a few people that know just from the groups and stuff, or just have talked to me personally, I would say for a good 3 years off and on, it was very strong for the first like 8 months. And then I would kind of go back to it and back to it and then, and so forth. And I have developed quite a profile on John Middleton, who we now know was Regulator John Middleton, who rode with the kid, was a part of the original regulators. He was uh, the last man to speak to John Tunstall before he was killed. And we know from the account he was hollering for Tunstall to follow them, and Tunstall got confused. His horse went the opposite way, and Tunstall was going, "What, John? What,
What?
John?" And that what? And that was the last that he spoke. Middleton gives a great account of that day and everything that took place. Wrote letters to John Partridge Tunstall, revealed some very interesting information in those letters. A couple years back, I did an article about the correspondence of those letters and breaking it all down and analyzing, where Middleton was coming from and really what he was all about. And yeah, I have been developing this for quite a while, and I think that I am ready to either do a full-on episode or maybe a two-part episode and everything anyone's ever wanted to know about Jesse Ward Dancer, alias John Middleton. That will be the episode. And so
Yeah.
everything I thought about doing an article many times. I've been told I should do a book, but it would be more of a central focused article. And I think the most interesting thing about John Middleton, Jesse Dancer, is his son, Thomas
Yeah.
Dancer. Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah, and
and
that's fresh ground. Nobody knows it. That's
no,
a guy who's not talked about.
no, and there's quite a few Tom Dancers too, so you'd have to know exactly which one. But yeah, I have gone down that road and had to do the same thing with Swain. Followed one Tom Dancer for about maybe a week, doing nothing
Yeah.
but newspaper articles and ancestry work, only to discover that was not my Tom Dancer. So
Yeah.
again, a lot of hard work went into it, and I have got it well mapped out. And I think I'm ready to just put it all out there to the world. And I think what sucks is that to this day, there is still no legitimate photograph of John Middleton. There isn't anything even close.
Yeah.
I have been in contact with one of his descendants, and nobody's ever seen a photo of him. Nobody.
That's wild.
So it is wild. And I kept thinking, you know what? No, there's always something you'll come across if you go deep enough. I was able to find a photo of his brother-in-law. I found photos of his second wife's parents.
Wow.
Charlie Concord. There's lots of photos of Charlie Concord, but yeah, still no photo of John Middleton. However, the information is great, and it's just something that I've been working really hard on, and I think I'm ready to do an episode out there at some point and put it all out there. And yeah, that'll be coming soon. We'll
I'm
determine what we're
also
going to do next. Yeah.
So yeah, I also talked to our friend Daniel. He was
Yeah,
a he worked at the Alamo for a number of years, I believe, and
that's right.
I got to reading a few articles about the famed legendary tunnels under the Alamo, and so I want to follow that folklore from, I mean, as far back as the 1890s all the way up to the 1940s
Right.
about the rumor that there are these tunnels under the Alamo that lead different places, and then he's got a lot of stories about the Alamo, and talking about some legends and ghost stories and things like that. So I just thought that would be interesting to have him on. So we're going to do that in the future. And
Yeah,
anybody who has any
that'd be
ideas,
great.
or yeah, and anybody who has ideas and topics that they want to hear about, that they want us to do an episode or two on, just shoot us a message. Or comment on YouTube or join our Facebook group, and get a hold of us, and we'll be happy to look into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I kind of, when you were saying like, well, it is kind of out of the time frame a little bit. I mean, hell, even Albert Johnson's out of the time frame a little. But like I said, we just kind of want to do what we want and the
That's
stuff
right.
that's real interesting and the stuff that no one talks about. You know,
Yeah.
we were very involved in a community where there's a lot of oomph, a lot of strength, a lot of die down, a lot of build up, a lot of disappointment. And, you know, after a while, and disappointment by just like the stuff that you can research all you want about the kid and the stuff we're probably at this point, I can say, I don't think we're ever going to know. That's
Right.
unfortunate. And I think it's because of all the years that those trails have been tried and tested, and you know we've all come up on short, and so maybe someday, but I would say at this point we know what we're going to know, and that's those disappointing things. I started wanting to explore these other oddities of the West and these other stories, other people, and look at the stuff that we've encountered. I didn't know anything about Albert Johnson until last month. Nothing. Never even heard of him. And I think the story far exceeds some of the old West tales that we get stuck in, you know,
Yeah.
in that rut over and over again. And, you know, and I think that was the kind of thing that you and I talked about, is just let's branch out. You know, if someone comes to us and say, hey, we would love for you guys to do what your core passion, you know, do an episode on the kid and Garrett, do an episode on Lincoln County War, you know,
Oh
if
yeah.
if someone wants to talk about something specific that wants us to attack, if you have a question like a post I did a few weeks back, was Billy present for John Tunstall's funeral? Something specific, because there's so much out there that we absolutely do know. And one thing we discussed is that there's lots of kid podcasts out there that cover kid history. And I just want to keep from being too repetitive. You know what I mean? And I think it's really hard to not be repetitive if you're going to go down that territory, because it's hard not to. You know, you have to kind of also rekindle and uh, reinvest yourself in that, because there's so many intricate details that you can forget, you know,
Yeah.
and that is still my core passion. And I still love talking about, you know, Kid and Garrett. So, you know, if anybody still wants, you know, something specific to be discussed, just throw it out there. We're not opposed to doing anything like that. We just thought, you know, we'll just kind of start doing these other things, and maybe we'll, you know, converge on a path back to the Kid and Garrett at some point, and, you know, and talk about everything that we don't talk about. You know, I mean, when I brought that up, I don't know if anybody listening is really can remember these names, but in kid history, you're going to encounter three people: Houston Chapman, John Tunstall himself, and Harvey Morris. All three men who died either directly because of the Lincoln County War or the consequences after the Lincoln County War. They all three specifically came from very, very wealthy families, very wealthy fathers. And I thought one of these days, you know, it'd be a good episode specifically to discuss how come these three men all still stay buried where they stay buried.
Right.
You know, Tunstall's father living in London, that's understandable. You know, and remember they put him in a steel coffin, because I believe the idea was that he was going to go back to England, and it just never happened. And I think that's a pretty, you know, easy thing to get, you know, to get around. Like, you understand, like, you know, trying to travel a body from New Mexico in
Yeah.
1878 to London, England, you know, that's difficult for anybody. But Harvey Morris, Houston Chapman. You did an article, you know, a year or two back on Houston Chapman, and a lot of about his father. And I think that was one of the things that triggered me. I'm like, man, that's another guy who came from a very wealthy and powerful background. And, you know, he is still lying behind the Tunstall store.
Doss,
It's
let's put
interesting.
down Jim Highsall, the killer of Dick Smith during the Pecos War. David says he's learned some over the years, but would love to see what we could find. So,
Absolutely. I know quite a bit about Jim Highsaw. Yeah, we'll
yeah,
put that on the list. Yeah, I've covered the Pecos War quite a few times in the past. It's a very interesting time frame, and Jim
excellent.
Highsaw's, yeah, Highsaw's got some interesting history in the Pecos. Yeah,
Colin
yeah,
says he seconds the Pecos War episode. So sounds good.
absolutely. All right.
Yeah,
Well, we've got some stuff to, you know, kind of meet through, and we'll return next week with
something.
something to feed everyone's appetite, and
Yeah,
I think that will wrap up Albert Johnson, or whatever his name was, the Mad Trapper of Rat River. And I want to point out one last thing. That legend status, the hype, the media, he's laughing, right? Maniacal laughing after they blow up his cabin. What you said, the account of he waves at the RCMP before he fires back. Little things like that, but something that's pointed out quite a few times in that documentary by some of these criminal profilers. Good point to make. He might have been, like kind of crazy, maybe off balance a little, but the point to remember is that they don't think that he was mad. They don't think he was psychotic. He was very calm, handled himself, even though, granted, shooting king, but I mean, it was just the things that he accomplished. They kind of feel like if he was a man that didn't have his, wits constantly about him, he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he had achieved. And I also do believe that that would have come with some type of military training, something. How does someone accomplish that? Especially when they
Well, Jen said it was a great two-parter. Loving the channel. We appreciate that. We like to go off the beaten path a lot. We don't want to always talk about Billy or Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday or just all the greats. And we hope that folks enjoy delving into the Mad Trapper of the 1930s or, John Swain. And of course, we're going to talk about the bigger legends. You can't always avoid them, but we do hope folks enjoy these trails of exploring the lesser known aspects. And glad you enjoy it. Hope you keep coming back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As always, this program is sponsored by Star Grocery. If you are in the area of Purcell, Oklahoma in the 1890s, stop by Star Grocery for all your consumer needs. Star Grocery.
What place is it, James?
Yeah, that's the place.
It's the place. There is
Hey, we had a great time
to buy groceries.
That's right. Yeah, in the 1890s, you can't beat it. So if you're ever there in that particular decade and century, stop by. Rollins says he loves this format. We thank everybody for listening. It was a great time. Great series. We've wrapped up 2 series, Doss.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I'm enjoying it. It's so much fun.
Cool. Well, we will see you all next week. And as always, thank you for listening.